I was recently asked why I live the way that I do. The simple answer would just be because I'm a white man who is going free, healing myself of indoctrinated, forced trauma, white guilt. So fundamentally, all white people are raised from birth told that they are less than other races, inherently evil, and that we have to apologize for just existing. And as an individual, I'm healing myself of this abuse and trauma, so I have no white guilt. And we live in a system which is anti-white and thus persecutes whites on the basis of our race, and predominantly that persecution of whites is directed towards whites like myself, because I'm going free of the trauma and abuse that we've all suffered, and so I have no white guilt. You could look at like a line of people. If the whole white race was in a line, shoulder to shoulder, anti-whites like to inflict white guilt and traumatize and abuse us, and we're abused from childhood, again told that we're inherently evil and we have to say sorry to other races, etc. Like in Australia here, there's a whole thing about saying sorry to Aboriginals, even though I've never done nothing wrong to any Aboriginal, so I shouldn't have to say sorry, and no other white person should. So this type of racial attack, abuse, traumatizing, dehumanizing of innocent white people, so they again think less than, they feel less than, right? Destroying their sense of worth as an individual, so as well stealing their potential to achieve in their life, because obviously we can understand, you destroy someone's self-esteem, right? That's going to lower their potential to achieve, right? To take a hold of opportunities which may arise. They'll have less confidence. They won't feel that they have that inherent talent or power to tap into within themselves to go that extra mile to actually achieve something in their life. Why? Because they're white and they've been abused and told that they need to apologize to Aboriginals, etc. So this is actually a theft of our potential as individuals. And as well, that's why so many white folk are alcoholics and gambling addicts, drug addicts, sex addicts, porn addicts, etc. All these degenerate addictions, okay? Majority of white folk who have any of these problems or addictions, that's the 100% reason, the only reason. Why? Because they were abused from childhood since they were babies and told they need to apologize for simply existing. They need to say sorry to the Aboriginals because they exist as white children. So traumatized from childhood because they're white, and that's why majority of white people today who are addicts, alcoholics, drug, junkies, just dysfunctional in any way whatsoever, criminally inclined, so more likely to act out in criminal manners and uncivil, illegal activity, things like this. The vast majority of these things in white people is because these white people have been abused from childhood, told they need to apologize, for example, like in Australia, to the Aboriginals. So your average white criminal, why is he a criminal? Because he was abused from birth since he was a little baby, so he's been abused his entire life, molested his entire life. Every single white criminal in the jails, every single one. Why? Because they've been molested from birth by anti-whites in an anti-white system. We have an anti-white government, an anti-white system that persecutes white folk on the basis of our race. Again, how? By telling us we have to apologize for being white, for just existing, being who we are. Same reason why every white person who's a heroin addict and has their life's been destroyed by heavy drugs and things like this. Why? Because that white person, every single white person who is a heroin addict or an ice junkie or whatever, every single one. Why? That white person was abused from childhood, okay, for simply existing and being a part of the race they were born into. So that's why white people in the world today have these problems and issues, because of racial discrimination and racial attacks on us as a race, as a whole. The dehumanizing of our people. So that makes our own people see themselves as less. So they become heroin addicts, they become alcoholics, they commit crime and go to jail. Again, why? Because they see themselves as less. They don't see themselves achieving anything better with their lives. Again, why? Because they were abused for being white, traumatized since childhood. Okay? So, when this happens, again, let us imagine all white people standing in a line shoulder to shoulder. The more this happens, the more these people are pushed back and back and back into the obscurity of the darkness and shadows behind the line, until they either die from some overdose or they kill themselves, commit suicide, etc. That's getting pushed all the way back until they're not seen anymore. So, where am I in the line? If I'm a white man who has no white guilt, I'm actually healing myself of the trauma and abuse that I've suffered my entire life. I'm proud to be white. I will never say sorry to anyone for being white or for anything that whites have ever done. In fact, I actually ask people to say thank you, because the white race has done more good for other people than any other race that's ever existed in all of existence, the entire universe. No one's done better or been nicer than us whites. So we deserve a thank you, okay? So, understanding this whole context and the way the world works, why are there white people who are heroin junkies? Why do white people commit suicide? Why are there white people who are depressed? Why are there white people in jail committing crimes? That's right, because they're traumatized and they've been abused since childhood for being white, okay? And on this line, they're being pushed back until they're in obscurity. You can't even see them anymore. They disappear, they die, suicide, or they overdose, or they life imprisonment and they never see the light of day again. Okay, they disappear into the shadows. So, if I'm the opposite, I'm a white man healing myself, going free, and I have no white guilt, and I will never apologize to anyone ever for being white. Where am I on that line? That's right. Right at the front. I'm the target. I've got the bullseye on my forehead. I'm out in the front taking the flak, the attacks, for the entire race. I'm getting attacked, literally abused. I've almost been killed by anti-whites in anti-white attacks because people want to try to dehumanize us on the basis of our race. Literally almost died in anti-white racial attacks. And much more that I don't really need to go into all the details here. I've suffered a lot for my people, for your children, for the white race, for our ancestors, for the next generations who will come. This anti-white system has forced me to be homeless because of this. They've taken everything from me. Again, why? Because on this line, if the white race, every single white person is in a line, okay, shoulder to shoulder, all those people who are actually still traumatized, affected by white guilt, this trauma, this abuse, they've been pushed off into obscurity. So where am I? I've been moved forward. I'm out in front of the white race. So if we're looking at the white race in a metaphor, an analogy, I'm a leader of the white race, an elder of the white race, out in front, leading the way, protecting the innocent children, a hero of the white race, like a warrior king, okay, out in front of the army. So, again, the simple answer, why do I live the way that I live? I'm a white man who is healing myself of the racial attacks and the trauma on me and my people. So I have no white guilt. I love myself. I love my race. I love my ancestors. I love each and every white child on this planet. And I will fight to protect them and uphold their well-being. And we live in an anti-white system which persecutes whites on the basis of our race, dehumanizes us on a government level. The only race in the entire country where there's actually laws written to discriminate and persecute us on the basis of our race. Every other race is protected by laws, but it's only our race where there's actually laws written into the federal government to purposely discriminate and harm us, to take away our opportunities, to rob us. So that's your answer, folks. Those asking, those curious, and those wondering. Now, some folk might say, okay, so why don't you just go work a 9 to 5, slave your ass off, so that you can, fork out a bunch on rent somewhere, get your own place, rent a place like this, and work like that, like what people would say a normal life, like a normal quote-unquote person. Again, simple answer, I'm a white man. I don't have trauma from the abuse on our race. I have no white guilt. And we live in an anti-white system. Simple, short answer. But what does that mean? We'll go back to the analogy we used before. If you are in this metaphorical line, which is the white race, we have certain customs and ways, certain traditions that go back for thousands and thousands of years that haven't changed and will never change because they are part of our spirit, our biospirit. They're part of who we are, the underlying makeup that manifests our behaviors, our personalities, and who we are as white people. So the reason why we do what we do as white people is because we have this underlying biospirit which is never changing, and it's existed for thousands of years, and it's going to be the same for thousands of years to come. And that's why there's certain things that we do, certain things that how we act, certain ways that we live that have been exactly the same since the dawn of time, and their traditions, they're passed on, their customs, and they will not change. They cannot change because they're actually a part of who we are. So as long as white people exist, we will live in these ways. We will have these customs and behaviors and expressions in the world because it's like a spider and its web. That's a perfect way to put it across. So the actions and the behaviors of us as white people is like in our cities that we build, our roads, okay, the technologies that we develop, running water, all these things. This is like our web that we produce. So every type of spider has a certain type of web, and only that spider makes that type of web, and no other spider can make that web, okay? It's a part of us. Even though it's an external thing we build in the world around us, it's actually part of our biology. It's a part of our DNA. And one of these significant things, which is a custom of white people, which goes back for thousands and thousands of years, and again, it's a part of who we are, it's underlying, it's a part of our spirit, okay, so it can't change, it's eternal, it has to remain forever eternal, okay, is that we as white folk, again, with the analogy, the metaphor, you're on the line, the white race is this line. If you're pushed back because of the trauma and the anti-white abuse, you're pushed back into the darkness, then you won't uphold these standards and customs. But the more you come into the light of the spirit of your people and your ancestors, and you take up that flame to pass on to the coming generations, all right, the more you uphold and you learn to go free of the trauma and learn to love yourself and your culture, okay, your ways, your people's ways, etc. The more you come into the natural expression of standards as a member of Western kind. So, again, one of these customs, which is eternal and has been around for thousands of years, will be forever, for thousands of years to come, is that, and it's only, again, when you're closer to the front of the line, like myself. But if you're pushed back, you won't have these standards and customs. You won't act like a healthy white person because you've been pushed back from the line. So when you come forward, or you're just somewhere in a healthy position on this line as a white person, you naturally express white behaviors and actions and customs. Again, because they're instinctual, they're part of our genetics, they come from our spirit, our DNA. You can't control it. You can only suppress it through abusing white people and traumatizing them so they don't express their natural potential as members of Western kind. But because I'm going free of the trauma and abuse of our people on the basis of our race, that means I have these natural expressions of white standards. I live like a healthy white person. And again, let's just finish this all up. One of these standards to be a white person, to live as a white man, okay, is us whites, we will not and do not work for anyone else. We do not and we will not work when we are told to work. We will not and we do not work, okay, for basic needs and just to survive, to have money to pay for rent and food. That is not how white people live. We never have, we never will. If a white person lives like that, that's called being a slave in our culture, in our traditions, our customs. That's called being a slave, not a free citizen. A free white man works when he wants, how he wants, for himself, and he keeps all of his income. He pays no taxes to anyone, ever. And he doesn't work for any system or group or nation which is opposed to the well-being of him and his own race. So because I'm a healthy white man, I can't just go get a job and work in an anti-white system which persecutes my people, innocent white children, and traumatizes them, molests innocent white children. How could I work and perpetuate that? How could I pay taxes to a tribute to a slave master who has enslaved my race so that he can put that money and tribute, my hard work, towards abusing and molesting more white children? Because that's all your taxes going towards, perpetuating this anti-white system which molests and abuses innocent white children. So clearly, no healthy white person could work and pay taxes in any anti-white system. unless they felt like there could be situations where there's a dichotomy there, where a white person who's becoming healthy still feels like, oh no, what am I going to do? How am I going to manage? You know, how am I going to look after myself if I don't rely on being dependent to a slave system which uses everything that I build and make to then just go and abuse more innocent white children? Obviously, any healthy white person wants to try their hardest never to pay $1 of tax in their life. Okay? But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're a white man or woman, you don't need to be dependent on anyone or anything in this whole world. We built the whole world. Okay? So if men like me built every great empire, we built every great city, everywhere there's running water and electricity on the planet. Men like me did it with our own bare hands, blood, sweat and tears. So I know I could do it myself. And if you're a white man or a woman who is healthy, going free of racial attacks and trauma, tapping into the potential that you have within yourself as a member of Western kind, okay, you can do just what any other white person has done before you. You can be a better musician or composer than Mozart. You could be a greater warrior and leader than Alexander the Great. Okay? You can be a greater scientist, more intelligent than Isaac Newton. Why? Because you're a white man or woman. So, I know I'm a white man. I know I can be a greater scientist than Isaac Newton. I know I can be a better warrior and king than Alexander the Great. Why? Because he did it. So that means I can definitely do it equal or better, because I come after him. So I'm the upgrade. I'm like Alexander the Great, but better. Okay? And that's you too, if you're white. And if you don't understand that deeply, that's because you're traumatized because of the anti-white attacks. But if you do understand that, you understand you have the potential. Just you and 5 other men could build a space program and travel the galaxies. Literally, me and like 5 other blokes, if we work together, because we're white. We could build an entire space station. Just 5 white men. Why? Because we're white. That's what we do. We can do anything we want if we put our minds to it. So, if you're still making excuses and justifications as to why you're going to work and paying taxes in an anti-white slave system that uses everything you make to just enslave our race even more and harm our children even more, because you're worried you won't be able to be an independent white person who can manage and look after themselves, well then, you're still not tapping into that potential that you have, in my humble opinion. But that's my position, my stance. I'm healthy enough, free enough, okay, healed enough from the trauma, psychological abuse of anti-whiteism, that I'm healthy enough as a white individual. Okay, I'm a healthy white man to the point where I actually can't go and I'm too strong. Okay, I'm too healthy, too strong of a white man to actually go to work and pay taxes, a slave tribute to slave masters, because that's weakness. I'd rather stand on my feet and die as a man than live on my knees like a little coward slave. Why? Because I'm white and I'm healthy. And that's the natural way that whites are. That's how we naturally express in the world. Again, it's a custom, a tradition, a way of being that goes back thousands of years, and it's going to exist for thousands of years to come. It's eternal. So whether we like it or not, this is the way we move forward in the future as a race, as a people. We break away from the system, we stop working, we stop paying taxes, and we build our own new society. Like we always have. Every society that's ever existed, we built it. So we're just going to build a new one. It's going to be better than this. While this one crumbles and falls apart, we'll build a new one that's free, where there are no taxes, there is no slavery. Okay? Where we live as healthy white people, free citizens, free men and women, no longer enslaved in an anti-white slave system. My way of seeing this, to make this a bit more clear, is that I feel the real question is, why don't you live like me? The question shouldn't be, why do I live the way that I live? The question you should be asking is, why aren't you living how I live? Why aren't you living like this? Focus on yourself, developing yourself, bettering yourself, not comparing yourself to others or focusing on other people. Focus on yourself, compare yourself to yourself yesterday, and make sure that you today is a little bit better than you yesterday. And heal yourself of anti-whiteism, white guilt, and go free, tap into your potential, recapture your destiny as a member of Western kind, so that together, collectively, we can recapture the destiny of our folk as a whole. I hope that answers your question, mate. If you have any queries, further questions, feel free to throw them my way. Take it easy.